Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center. It's here on the show that we actually address things that you need to be considering as you're working on your business, building the premier accounting firm in your area, offering quality accounting services, and most importantly, getting paid what you're worth. It's here on the show that we have on guests, experts in their own right, as to what it is that we need to be doing to work on our business. We have a variety of topics that we share each and every week, ranging from marketing, selling, pricing, tech stacks, training staff, mental health, and so forth. And today's going to be a wonderful conversation about operations, working efficiently and being productive with what we do. I've got on the show today Jen Hamilton. She is the founder of Hamilton COOs. She recognizes that operations leaders are the unsung heroes of the business world. If they're successful, most people won't be noticing them. And if they mess up, everyone knows who it is and what they did. It takes a special kind of person to actually love that kind of role and make it work. But many small businesses don't have the resources to hire or grow these kinds of leaders. Often the founder or CEO ends up being the head of operations. And therefore, as a fractional COO, she actually mentors others through the Fractional COO Collective. Jen Hamilton actually helps business owners and managers run their day and operations more effectively and productively so that they can focus on growth and what drew them to the business in the first place. So Jen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Roger. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. So one of the things that I stress as I work with businesses is efficiency. That's where the profitability lies. And so to talk today about operations, I've got a lot of questions and I'm excited to dive into all this with you. But I'm curious, give us a little bit of a backstory. Why and how did you become the COO expert? And most importantly, why did you start your business?
Sure. Well, it's interesting because I really align with your audience because I started my career as a CPA. I worked as an auditor in PricewaterhouseCoopers, and then I went
Uh-huh.
into a regional firm, and that regional firm got bought out, or a local firm got bought out. Like I kind of went through the whole all sizes of firms, and it was there that I started to fall in love with the process side, the internal controls, what your finances could tell you, so I could appreciate the power of our numbers and what they tell us. But I started to really enjoy, which maybe not everyone would think this, but I like the people side as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
When I became a senior and later a manager, I just really enjoyed the opportunity I had to grow my team, help them be efficient, train them well. Like seeing them successful really was something that got me very, very excited. And as I left public accounting, I actually leaned more into the people side of things and became an education consultant. And I was working with teachers and schools and school districts all across California. And it's there where I really learned how do you get people who don't want to be there to get their work done and do it well, which is what teachers do every day when the students aren't paid to be there like our employees. So uncovering like what is the magic to get people motivated and accountable then led me into expanding into my own business. I wanted to take what I had learned, the combination really of accounting and business acumen, and bring that leadership piece. And so I started my own consulting firm as operations consultant and leadership and management coach, bringing kind of the how to's, a lot more of the here's the steps, not just here's an idea, you go figure it out. I really am about making sure people do it. That naturally evolved into becoming a fractional COO because I started sitting in that seat for small businesses, helping them as their number two,
Mm-hmm.
figuring out what to do, what levers to pull, what things to fix to run their business well. And I've always appreciated working with accounting firms. I also work with small boutique law firms and management consulting because we all have very similar challenges, and they're my people.
I love it. Well, the fact that you have that accounting background is so important to our discussion, simply because I feel what we're going to discuss is going to be so relevant to the accounting profession. So that's very important. But I do want to tap into a few of the things that you commented on as you were speaking. One of the things that came to mind is an adage that I'm sure many of the people who listen are familiar, and it's that phrase of revenue is vanity and profit is sanity. And so as it relates to operations, what I always refer to is there's a lot of effort that we can do as a revenue producing type activity. But when it becomes now our focus of how do we actually increase profitability, it all stems from the efficiency in which we work. It's the operations side of business. So when we want to be profitable, we've got to focus on our procedures, our processes. So that was one of the things that came to mind as you were talking. But as you evolved from the accounting into the COO space, one of the things that you mentioned is the importance of people and getting them motivated. And that's one of the things that I think is so important, is that we have to recognize that so much of what we're doing is people oriented. It's working with our clients, working with our staff, and we've got to have still that finesse of being able to work well with individuals. And sometimes I think the accounting person is drawn to the profession because of the numbers, and we tend to forget the individual side of the business, the personal side. So as to motivations, what would you say are some of the key things that you have found that are essential or helpful when motivating our employees?
It's a great question, and I love that you came from a profitability point of view, because I think a lot of times, especially being numbers people, it helps when we can put numbers to it. And
Hmm.
while you say efficiency, I say I very much agree, and I say productivity. How
Hmm.
productive can our team be? That's where our profitability is really going to come from. Your main expense is your team. It's your salaries, your huge expense.
Hmm.
So unlike manufacturing, where we can, maybe make the machinery work more efficiently, for all the good and all the troubles that it is, it's about having our team be more efficient. And so it is coming down to motivation, influence, leadership, accountability, those things that I will say I didn't learn getting my CPA, getting my degree, and then getting my CPA. And really, I got some professional development training, but most of my leadership and development training came outside of the firms. Even though I was in really reputable firms, like, this stuff isn't natural, yet we're
Yeah.
expected just to know. And so, like you said, some of the things for motivating, the biggest thing you could do is find out what's in it for them. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just like marketing, right? It's just the same thing we do with our clients. What does your team care about? Just like you would ask your client, what's the goal they want? And your job as their leader and their provider, if you will, of financial, but also, really kind of fulfillment, in that they can put their good skills to good use, is at work. And so what you want to know is what motivates them, what gets them excited. If you know that what they really like is having some great vacations in May after busy season, then what can you do to help make sure that happens as their leader? And say, that's what we're working towards. I know we're working hard on these Saturdays in end of March here, beginning of April, but like, you're one step closer. Like, so it's just really putting it into their language, what's in it for them, and then acknowledging that their skills, their expertise is making a difference. That's all we really want.
Oh, I'm liking how you kind of encapsulated all of that. There's a few things that I want to tap into. First of all, you talked about WIFM. WIFM is the acronym for what's in it for me. So
Mhm.
that's very important to understand. You have to understand their point of view, their perspective. What is it for them? The second thing is, you were talking about personal time. I remember very much in my career working at a company where it was kind of like a badge of honor how much PTO time you forfeited or lost at the end of the year because you didn't take time off. And it was one of the things that people would kind of not necessarily gloat over, but it was like, oh, I didn't take vacation this year. And the other person say, I lost 10 days. I lost 13 days. It was kind of like this thing to say you were working harder than everyone else. So to come into an environment where I am now, where personal time is encouraged, we want them to go out and have purpose and, more importantly, enjoy life. And one of those things that's also very important is I feel vicariously living through their vacations. What did you do? What was fun? What did you eat? Those types of things bring, I think, a good deal of excitement into the office place. So I think that's very valuable. But as it relates to motivating individuals, what I've learned is that there's 4 types of people or situations in life that people are motivated by. And one is time, one is money, one is recognition, and the last but not very common is altruism. And
Mhm.
I'd be curious what you think about each of these. Time is those individuals that if they could, they'd go the extra mile, but they would like in exchange maybe a day off, a 3-day weekend that they could
Yeah.
take. And that's something that's very encouraging because they have hobbies and interests and things that they'd like to do outside of the office. And they just want time to go do that. The second is that person who wants to be motivated by money. You give them time, they wouldn't know what to do with it. They're in that position where honestly, they would just go home and binge watch something on Netflix. Really nothing too productive, no one to be with. But if you gave them money, they'd be very excited because maybe they have something financially that they're having to take care of, something they're saving for and need to pay off. And so if you did something extra and went above and beyond and paid them, $100, $500, $1,000, they'd be excited and ecstatic and be willing to do it. But there's something to notice about that. The one person, you give them extra money and it might not change their life, or the other person, you give them the money and it's going to be just a huge relief on something. The last person is that of recognition. It's that point that you were mentioning a moment ago, that they're actually contributing and participating in the office. Something that they're doing matters. It makes a difference. And people do need that recognition. Some people shy away from it. They don't want to be the center of attention, but there are others who thrive on it. And they want to know that they are recognized for the things that they're doing. They want to be the employee of the month. They want that extra parking spot that they can park out front of the office. They want to actually have their plaque on the wall. Why? Because they want to have their work noticed.
Mhm.
And if they know that what they're doing matters and other people see it, then they feel like they're contributing. What would you add to all of that?
Well, gosh, you said it so well. I think so. Here's when you were sharing, what I was reminded of is the book Drive by Daniel
Yes.
Pink.
Uh-huh.
And he talks really about all of the different ways that we as humans have needs, and how can you connect meeting those needs to our work environment. So one of the things that I really like is that motivation, like you were talking about, time, and it's time freedom and flexibility. A lot of times I think if you start to kind of dissect it, it's not just I got to give them PTO. It might be the flexibility of okay, I'm going to work later on Monday because I want to leave early to catch my kids' baseball game on Tuesday. Just
Yes.
being able to have that flexibility in their time. And I would also say too, when you're talking about recognition and motivation and money and time, it changes throughout people's lives as their lives change. So don't assume that someone who started in their 20s when they're 40 has the same thing. So your time
Correct.
motivation
Hmm.
and your money motivation may be very different. Like you
Yes.
said, someone just make, okay, I'm just going to go home and play more video games. But I know as I have seen my own life change, my husband and I have like increased our vacation budget because it's like, well, let's go do this while we can, kind of like, let's not wait till we're retired to go and see these incredible places around the world. So part of it is just continuing to be in communication with your team. One of the things that I recommend is at least what I learned out of EOS in Traction, the entrepreneurial operating system, is what's called quarterly conversations. And I've heard this in other environments too, but that is not a performance review. It's just that leader meeting. Maybe you just go lunch, you meet somewhere else, even if you're on Zoom, just take it in kind of another environment to say, okay, what's going well? What is it that you're wanting to do? How is this last quarter? What do you want for the next quarter? Just do that kind of person to person check-in. You're gonna have those opportunities then to find out what's motivated. What are they working on? Do they need a little bit more money? Do they need a little bit more time? Are they not feeling recognized? Are they not being appreciated enough? And all of those motivations, you're going to get some clarity about what is it that you need to do and step up and step in. And if you're the staff person who doesn't have someone you're leading yet, communicate this to your leaders so they know what's going to work for you, because why not ask for what you want? I know there's sometimes this entitlement kind of concern, but I think if you ask in a way that is a matter of, hey, let's create a win-win. I want to work harder for you. I want to get this done for you, but I also need to see if I can go do, my soccer team as adults, like whatever it is you want. Make sure that it's just like the other direction. What's in it for the firm?
Hmm.
What's in it for the leader? And if those conversations are mutual, it really does work well for both sides.
Yeah. One of the things that you reminded me of is when someone speaks up for themselves, I'm happy that they're actually advocating for themselves. No
Yeah.
one else is going to advocate for them. So it's very important to accept and recognize that it's okay for them to advocate for themselves. But at the same time, it's also okay to say no to whatever they're asking for, because you have to also consider that you represent the company, and more importantly, have that perspective that you need to represent. You're the steward of the business. And so you've got to make sure it's a good deal for both parties. So yeah, they might have an ask, and they're very much entitled and right to ask for it, because no one else is going to do it for them as well. But you do have the ability to say no when appropriate. So yeah, very important point. Now, one of the things I want to do is get back to this operational side of things. As a company grows, what are some of the telltale signs that would indicate that they need to spend a little bit more time, or perhaps even invest in the operational side of the business, focusing on the processes and the procedures that you mentioned?
It's a great question. And I think there's different stages that you go through. So,
Hmm.
depending on where you're at with your firm, if you are really the main service provider, maybe you're the one that does the tax and you've got a bookkeeper, or maybe you're starting, like I see a lot of these popping up, which I love this model too, outsourced accounting departments. So, you have a
Hmm.
bookkeeper, an accountant, and controller. However, it looks when you first start, usually it's you doing it all, including your admin side of it, right? So you're front of the office with the client, you're back of the office, somehow you're marketing and selling. As you start to realize I can't do it all, usually people will hire maybe another person to do client facing, maybe a little bit back office. Usually marketing and sales comes later. You just throw money at, tactics kind of thing. But what I find is that can handle without a lot of processes for a little while. What happens is you start to get complexity. The more people you add, the more clients you add, that's when you want to start having, okay, let's make sure we're all doing the same thing, which in other words is putting some processes in place, some expectations in place. When you feel like I don't know what's happening with my client, you're missing metrics, you're missing some check-ins or reports to just understand what is happening. And what's behind that, of course, is operational standard operating procedures, maybe checklists, again, metrics to see your utilization rate. Are we doing a lot of write-offs? Like, that's what helps you as leading your firm be able to step back, whatever level of leadership, step back and say, do we have a problem? Are we productive enough? Are our clients happy? By being able to rely on processes and the metrics and reports to tell you if they're working or not.
I like that. Now, in that whole process, one of the things that comes to my mind, and this is something I've actually experienced quite recently, is as business owners get involved in setting up these processes and procedures, they can evolve outside of our purview, if you will. And what I mean by that is I've had the opportunity to actually work with some managers, and I've given them the go ahead to take and own this operation. And then as I've come back months or years later to actually look at what's happening, I realize it's kind of taken on or morphed into something different than I would have expected. And I have to come back and put my fingerprint on it. So one of the
Mhm.
things I was curious about is, what's one of those things that the business owner needs to really kind of consider as they're wanting to regain control of the operations? Because there is a culture that we have. There is kind of a, this is how we do it around here, and you don't want to get too far removed from those things. So how do you actually, you know, get that business owner to again re-engage and put their fingerprint back on the operations?
It's a good question about getting back into the operations. One of the
Hmm.
things I would say is if you're in front of it, don't let go completely. So we'll go there first, and then we'll say, okay, what do you do when what most people do is they let go. So one of the
Uh-huh.
things that happens is that, and I mean, I'm experiencing it this week when I'm talking with clients, like two different conversations just this week around, oh my gosh, I finally hired someone. And you let go too much and too trusting, if you will,
Mm,
and you're not verifying.
been there,
And
done that.
me too, right? I'm seeing it for myself. And it's funny because I realized, okay, I'm doing that. I just brought in a new executive assistant. I realized, oh my gosh, I'm doing it with her. I literally said in my meeting with her, my weekly meeting where we recalibrate, figure out what she's going on. I said, we're setting the or hitting the reset button. So this is also how you sort of plug in and be like, let's just pause and figure out, like, what are your processes you're doing, what is the steps you're doing. And I just brought myself back in and said, oh, I would refine this needs to be changed a little bit. So again, if you could do it while they're being brought on, while they're being trained, is verify that it's going well. Force yourself to have more check-in meetings. It is a little excruciating, I will say, because you're like, I'm finally bringing someone on. I'm so overwhelmed. I just want to throw it at them and hope they swim. And oftentimes they sink. But they also will just figure it out if they're good people, and they may be figuring it out in a way that doesn't align with your bigger mission, your core values, your intention with your client. So you do want to at least do that trust and verify piece. But again, you can always reset the button and just say, let me take a look at how you're doing these. The other thing I would say, though, is that if you've got good people, there's probably a good reason they're doing what they're doing. So be careful in catching yourself and say, well, we've always done this. Let's go back to the way we do it. Instead, bring curiosity. Tell me more, even if they're proposing a new process. Tell me more why this is the current process. What did you find that makes it more productive, more efficient, more effective? Is there something there that the clients have requested? Because you might have scope creep or whatever. So you kind of
Mhm.
want to figure out what's underneath the reason for the change. And you might be pleasantly surprised they're doing something you wouldn't have thought of. And I'm sure that will happen. And I'm also sure it will happen. Then you'll be like, I cannot believe I let this happen. Why did I not catch this sooner?
Well,
But
I've experienced exactly what you're talking about, and there's a few things that I've done. First of all, there is a 3-step process that I follow. At least like to think I do it well, which is I first document. I want to actually record what's going on,
yeah,
and then with that, I then duplicate. I have somebody else do it, and I want to see, do they get the same results that I did? Can I expect them
brilliant.
following those steps to actually get what I expect? But then the third thing is once they, through that duplication, are proving that they can do what I'm asking them to do, I'll then delegate. You're now in charge of this. You're now responsible for it. And just recently, I've had 2 examples where I'm very trusting. And so I went ahead and basically said, I believe that you're better at me than this. You're going to be doing this on a day-to-day basis. So I believe that because you're all in, you've got more to now do with this. So take it and run with it. Take what we've already established and make it better. The problem is I've come into some of those situations and found that they just went off the rails. They just went off into the left field. I'm like, what are you doing? They got rid of things that I felt were essential to our culture. More importantly, I thought that were essential to whatever the process was. And they've simplified things too much. All of a sudden, what happens is I've got to step in and go, okay, what's going on? But your advice about curiosity, to come in and simply say, hold on a second. This is interesting. It's different than I expected. And with that curiosity, ask questions before accusing and making these heavy-handed changes. I think is wonderful advice. It's valuable advice because it maintains the relationship that you have with that individual, and more importantly, gets you in a position, maybe there is a reason why they've changed it that way that I didn't realize at first. So that curiosity comment was valuable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And they'll appreciate it too, because if you're not careful, like you said, you're very trusting. I am too. And it's bitten me in the butt. So I've learned some of these things the hard way, just like a lot of us do. And then, of course, I do a lot of leadership courses so that I can maybe not make it so long before I learn that lesson next time. But I think what's really, really powerful is that we do want to have good people. We do want them to feel trusted. It's going back to that motivation. If they feel like you don't trust them
Hmm.
because you go back and pull it back and you gave them freedom and then remove that freedom, you're going to lose that person in some way, shape, or form. Engagement, their trust of you, their willingness to give it all. If you don't trust them, what's in it for them? And really, at the heart of it is that we want to be trusted with it. So you do want to be careful when you go back in. And that's why I like a curious approach, because it's saying, I trust you. I want to understand what you were thinking
Hmm.
versus like, what the heck? Where did we go off the rails with it? It
Oh,
shows you're not, and you probably will pull back, which is okay. But if you start with curiosity and you agree, what becomes the new process versus like, we got to go back to the old ways. You forgot this, we missed this. This doesn't work for our culture. This doesn't work for our clients. It's a different approach, but you'll probably get to a much better result where they
mhm.
feel a part of it versus you just coming in as boss person and taking over and saying, nope, back to the old ways.
Yeah, the curiosity saves me from attacking, so that's good. Yeah, that's good. All right, so here's the thing I want to understand now is the
Mhm,
bottlenecks. I know that in processes, there's a lot of times that we run into bottlenecks. I'm just
mhm.
curious, is there a way to identify what might be a bottleneck or how to address or resolve it?
There is a couple places where I start looking for bottlenecks, and it's as top of the top as I can get. Usually, bottlenecks are caused by one or a few people making decisions. So that's a
Mm,
great place to look. And that's why I said, like, the top of the firm is a lot of times where we, again, it goes back to trust and giving reliance on a system. But we've been burned by people. So then we pull back decision making. And that's what's causing most bottlenecks. If you look at it in your organization, is like, wait, we have to get this approval, or
mhm.
I want to see before you run with it, like that kind of thing, because of what we just talked about. We got burned before and we're like, oh my gosh, we let him go too far. We need to make that decision.
Yep.
So, looking at your decision making framework, what is your ability to say, these are the things that at this role, because of what they know, they can make the decisions. These are the things they need to get a little feedback, or they can make the decision and then get feedback, or they need to present their decision to their leadership before they like, just be really clear. And what I like to say is, how risky is that? If it's not that risky, let them go. But if it's more risky, get either check in before they do, or a whole, you do bring it up to the leadership and like, let's have this decide, because it's risking liability, it's risking our reputation. Like, you want to just use risk to evaluate what can decide. That's one of the biggest bottlenecks. The other thing is, the processes themselves can have bottlenecks and problems in certain areas. So what I look for when I'm looking at processes and increasing productivity is, I look at handoffs when it goes from one person to another, or one
Mm,
department to another. So for
yeah.
example, sales to service, that can be a problem. Service to billing can be a problem. So I
Mhm.
look at where handoffs are. And then the other thing I look for is duplication of efforts, where, which can also happen in within a department or within the handoffs, but where are two people doing the same things, or where is nobody, like, totally dropped balls? And that's usually because they're missing accountability, because it's like, we're both accountable or no one's accountable. So I look for those little pieces, and that causes to release some of those pressure valves on those certain areas that really are what the bottlenecks are. But it also gives you something to fix, because you're looking for it. Because, like, it's easy enough to say, we're not efficient. It's like, what do you look for? So these are some of my best things to, like, zero in to see, do we have handoff issues? Do we have duplication of efforts? Do we have too many decisions that shouldn't be at the high level, and they can be brought down and distributed?
Well, the thing that really stood out to me is, first of all, how you identified that a lot of these bottlenecks may occur when you're actually going from one department to another department, or from one person to another person. Because clearly, the one individual that's involved, it's in their mind, they know what they're doing, there's processes, they can fill in the gaps. But the moment you're actually now handing it off to someone else, another department, they're not fully aware of what's going on unless there were good notes taken, unless all the things were documented well. So there's a lot of interpretation and let's say just speculation as to what's happening. So that's where a bottleneck could occur, because things get lost in that process. So I liked how you were actually defining that. The thing I would add to what you were sharing is to identify bottlenecks and see where they may exist. I encourage my clients to actually take off time out of the office, leave the office. And one of the things that I often encourage them to do is either take personal time unannounced, so nobody can plan or prepare for it. And by leaving personal time or going to a conference or going to see clients, you're out of that day-to-day operations. And what you're trying to do is, whether you leave for a day or you leave for a week, you're coming back to see what was left undone in my absence, that is then for, or therefore, a bottleneck. They were unable to move forward because, for whatever reason, they felt they couldn't make the decision. They were told they couldn't make the decision. They didn't know what to do. They weren't trained on it. And it starts to reveal places that are, in fact, those bottlenecks that we can now either train them on, address, give them permission because they felt they couldn't make that decision. So all these things kind of come to light just simply by removing yourself or someone else from the operations of the day to day. And all of a sudden, it's very apparent. Okay, these are the things that people can't do in our absence.
Mhm. That's brilliant. I love that, Roger, and I use it more when we're trying to test to see, can the practice run without the
Hmm.
owner or the leadership,
Yeah.
especially as they're looking towards, how do I know if I'm ready for exit, or
Yes.
transition, and so I love that you do that, and it's actually really true. And if you want to go back to that whole PTO, what's in it for the business?
Hmm.
Well, when people leave, you can start to see what breaks.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. All right. So here's the next thing. And I'm also very interested in this is how do you actually develop emerging leaders? Because clearly we're talking about operations here, procedures here. So there's partly the trusting that they're going to take our methodology, our culture into the processes that they're doing, but more importantly, that they're going to develop complementary processes that will actually enhance what we're currently doing. So how would you actually define the best way, describe the optimum way of getting these emerging leaders to kind of develop those skills?
It's a tricky one. So, emerging leaders, obviously, especially at least in the format that I went through as a CPA, you start doing the work. Then, maybe a year or two in, you start to supervise someone who did the work you used to do. And then it just sort of keeps going from there. However, there was, even though I was in PwC, which, incredible amount of ability to invest in professional development, if you look, most development is around the technical side. And what I really encourages you to have intentional soft skills side, if you want to, if we're kind of comparing it, but it's you really have to be intentional about teaching technical people how to work with people. It is not the same skill. And it's a misnomer that just because I was good at doing this means I can teach someone to be good at this. And so it takes a lot of really good mentoring. So if you this is part of where I got recognized in my accounting span of my career in public accounting, is that because I was doing a lot of personal leadership development outside of work, just because I started to find it so valuable. Mostly I was just looking at it first to relieve stress because I was like, woo, this is a lot of work. But I started to find that it made me better with people. And that's why I was able to rise up on the leadership side, because I was intentionally learning how to really teach people and motivate people, that kind of thing. So I would encourage you, if you can't fully invest or have them invest, and I do actually recommend having them pay for it too, so they have skin in the game, in some sort of leadership development of truly how to influence and teach someone. And what I would also recommend is doing what some of the firms did with me, is putting good mentors
Mm.
who are good and maybe natural teachers in with those folks that you want to be, so they can see what it looks like to have a good leader team member relationship, so that you're multiplying the kind of leadership that you want intentionally. Maybe they're doing, I know I did some in services and did some training of my fellow coworkers of like, what are some of the tricks I'm finding that work with our new staff or our more seasoned staff as we're trying to get them into more of a management position. So those are some more, you can decide on your budget, like what can you do. But I would say the worst thing to do is just assume that because they did it, they can get someone else to do it. We make that mistake in business everywhere.
Yes, we do. Too often, in fact. And one of the things I really appreciated is when you brought up the soft skills side of things. I mean, clearly somebody has an aptitude for one of the tasks. They can do things, and we can train them on the software. We can train them on the exercise of what it is that they need to do. But soft skills is oftentimes overlooked. And it reminds me of one example that I'm aware of where I was familiar with an individual that was firing individuals via email. It was, here's an email, you're no longer with the company. And when I learned of this, I was shocked. I was just, it's like breaking up with somebody via text, is the way I made it, kind of described it. There's no right way to perhaps do this, but it is definitely not via email. So one of the things that I really emphasized is that isn't an acceptable process. And we went through a situation where we actually said, here's what we're going to do. And we had to train the management on how to actually now not only lead up to possibly that termination, but if and when that was necessary, how to do this via either a remote thing where you're doing it in a camera. I'm not just going to call you. I want to see you and I want to talk to you, because I think there needs to be some level of communication that takes place there. But unfortunately, this individual who just thought it was appropriate to send an email saying you're no longer with the company was so unnecessary. And it's that soft skill. They lacked the ability to do confrontation, to be direct. They lacked the ability to actually speak clearly. And so that being said, it just led to a disastrous situation that we were clearly able to get in front of, but more importantly, learn from. So soft skills, can't say enough about those. And I like that you're suggesting people put some training into that. And there are various things that you can do to get trained, but you also mentioned mentoring. If you have, especially within your culture, individuals that do emulate those things that you're wanting to have others mimic, clearly you want to put them in a position where they can teach and kind of espouse those types of principles and teachings, that interaction in a way that allow people to kind of learn from it. So those were really good things for me. So here's one of the things that I want to kind of dive into then. We're talking about operations. Let's take it to the accounting level. What are some of the things that you would consider to be maybe best practices or helpful to kind of takeaways that we could maybe use or implement as it relates to our firms?
Couple things. One is make sure you take time to plan.
Mm,
Especially at that leadership level, taking the time to strategically plan and adjust your plan at least quarterly. So, knowing where you're going long term, knowing where you're going in the next year, that will get you to the long term is a good annual planning. Like that's why people call it annual planning.
I love
But then
planning.
checking in each quarter, right? We want to make sure we are still headed in the right direction, even though new things are going to happen and we might need to course correct. Um, then from there, you want to make sure that you're communicating and you're getting your leaders to align with your strategic direction, but also your core values, your mission. That there is that calibration around who we are, why we are, and where we're going.
Hmm.
From your leaders, you want to take it to your team members and get your teams to be accountable to, of course, their role and their performance, but also back again, like how what they're doing leads to that bigger strategic goal, how the way they're acting, the way they're behaving aligns with your core values and your mission, your why, and the way you work with your clients. And that should spill into your client experience,
Mm.
right? So then you want to make sure that you are having them be clear on what is the client being promised and where can you at least meet those baselines, and every once in a while have an appropriate wow moment. Where can you go just above and beyond? Because nowadays you can win over competition by your client experience. From client experience, I move on to looking at cash flows and profitability. We want to make sure that the services that we're providing are for the most profitable services, for the most profitable types of clients, and we're doing it with the most productive team. And that's, as you were saying before, we're going to see those results both in revenue and expense. Biggest expense, as we said before, is our team. We're going to see that result in the profitability. If any one of those are off, everything else needs to be looked at. And finally, the last piece that I look at, these are if you've been counting, these are 6 different things I look at. The last one is revenue development, which is the marketing and the sales.
Mm.
You need to look at it from an operation point of view. So not just a marketing point of view, but how are our conversion rates, both in our marketing to sales conversations and our sales conversations? How are we doing on training and staying up with trends? So that we can keep adapting our processes based on the results and based on the trends that are changing. Because the stuff that is changing in marketing and I believe in sales too is a little bit slower than marketing, but the way that people want to be sold to is evolving as our marketing evolves. And what's, I think, being left behind, going back to that client experience, is that personal touch. So if we can bring that personal touch into our sales and into our marketing, then they'll see that promise go all the way throughout the circle. So those are my things that I look at. Like if you have those things strong in your operations, you can weather all storms and you can grow.
Jen, I think that's amazing. Those are excellent 6 things to actually consider. And some of them really stood out to me because one of the things that I always stress is not just with the planning, but wowing the customer, as you mentioned, KPIs, those key performance indicators. Everyone, we're numbers people. So let's have metrics that we can use to manage our people and we can look at how efficient we are. But I liked how you tied production and sales together. That's one of the things that we also address. We have a acronym called MAP. M being marketing and sales, A being accounting, P being production. And with MAP, we map the business. And what we always want to see is that the sales and marketing are working with the production, because so often you're working so hard to get clients, but if the back end isn't wowing the customer, you could actually be losing, not retaining your clients as you would expect. And all that work that you did to get the client is for naught, because you're losing them on the back end. So there's a lot going on there. And I love how you were able to kind of articulate it and put out those 6 things for us to actually consider. So thank you. Definitely worth perhaps rewinding the episode and writing those down as you're doing this. So here's what I'd like to do is I'm going to recap a few things here. But Jen has an offer that I really want to invite everyone to take advantage of. It's something that you'll find in the episode description. It's something that is worth considering, and it's that she actually facilitates roundtables for CEOs and COOs. These are roundtables that you're invited to attend and actually learn from other professional service owners and leaders as they share practical ways to actually implement these things and things that they've used to overcome common challenges while running the firm. So you definitely want to check this out. In the episode description is the information you need to find out when the next roundtable is and attend and join. So definitely find out when it is that is, so that you can go and participate and learn from Jen what these things are and hear from the others at that roundtable what it is they're experiencing. And I'm sure you'll be able to contribute as well. In addition to that, one of the things that I want to stress is that there is a book that we have called In the Black, 9 Principles to Make Your Business Profitable. These are 9 things that you can be working on within your business, and as well take to your clients as to what it is they can do to make profit a priority. More importantly, 9 things that you can do to address the short-term, midterm, and long-term needs of your business. So check out In the Black in the episode description and get your copy today. In addition to that, I also want to encourage you to actually check out the Turnkey Business Plan for Accounting Professionals. This is the turnkey plan for accounting firms to actually know what you can be doing to build a thriving business, one where you're actually offering quality accounting services that consisting of perhaps bookkeeping, accounting, tax planning preparation, as well as CFO and advisory. But at the same time, it also addresses things from marketing, pricing, selling, client retention, just a variety of things that you want to consider as you're running your business. So get a free copy of the Turnkey Business course and go through that very quickly to understand what it is you can be doing next within your business. Now, with those things being said, let me just kind of recap our conversation. I really enjoyed Jen sharing her beginnings with this, obviously coming from an accounting perspective as a CPA. She obviously found, however, that she had more influence, if you will, in the operational sides of things and started to actually find that was her niche. And as she was niching into this area, she found that people were very valuable to the processes going on within the company. And so we talked about motivations, what it is that people can be motivated by, but we even involved into soft skills, understanding that in addition to the skills that we have to do the work, one of the things we have to understand is the ability to communicate it. And that's where we started to talk about things that we can do to kind of automate the processes. But we did distinguish the fact that as we grow our companies, oftentimes we remove ourselves from these various processes and procedures, and they lose our fingerprint. And what we need to do is, how do we re-engage or realign what it is that we have? And as we re-engage as business owners in the various things that we're doing, we try to assess what has changed, maybe what has been evolving, but more importantly, rather than attacking when those changes become apparent and maybe aren't in alignment with what we thought was right, we come at it with a curiosity and we find out what is it that caused that change and why they felt that was necessary. And it just basically changes the relationship that we're having with those individuals that we've delegated to, and we're coming back around to see how things have progressed. Now, the other thing that I thought was also very interesting is, as we move beyond that, we talked about bottlenecks. And one thing that was valuable is she was able to share various things that can cause the bottlenecks. One being the transfer of things from person to person or department to department. I thought that was very good to identify those transitions and seeing what we can do to improve that interchange. And that would be very helpful to actually eliminate the bottleneck. It's there that I also suggested the time that we remove ourselves from the day-to-day operations and see what doesn't happen in our absence, and therefore identifies that bottleneck that may exist in the business. She pointed out that that's a great exercise, especially when we're preparing to see when and if we're ready to exit the business, just to see what is it that's truly dependent upon our involvement. The other thing that was also helpful is, as we were talking about this entire thing, we were just basically getting into how to best actually help our emerging leaders. And it's giving them the soft skills, the communication skills, the things that they need to be successful. And then from there, she shared 6 things that we ought to consider as we're organizing our businesses, from planning, from obviously KPIs, the numbers we're looking at the integration or involvement of sales with production, just a number of things there that I thought were very helpful. So Jen did a great job sharing all those. Jen, what would you like to leave as a closing thought, however?
Well, I would love to say that when you really look at it, you as an accounting professional have a lot of power and influence to make a difference. It's oftentimes we get stuck in the weeds of doing the accounting and the numbers, but you really are providing quite a opportunity for people to make better decisions, to feel more confident, to feel supported. And I appreciate the work that you're doing. Seeing it now as someone who my clients are accounting firms, it's just so grateful for that expertise that you bring, that calm, that confidence that you bring to your clients. And I part of why I love what I do is I want more of your brilliance out there. And we don't want to have operations get in the way from you doing a great job with your clients.
I love it. No, that's wonderfully said. And your perspective does matter. So thank you for that. So, for my listeners, obviously, I want to encourage you, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. We'd love to have you subscribe and get notified each and every week when we release a new episode. It's here that we're actually sharing those insights as it relates to building the premier accounting firm, having these experts actually give us the perspectives that we need to consider as we're trying to address the needs of our clients from marketing, selling, pricing, onboarding, and so much more. So, definitely subscribe. We'd love to have you as a subscription, and more importantly, get notified as to each and every episode that we release on a weekly basis. In addition, I want to invite you to GrowCon. GrowCon is a conference that we have for accounting professionals, owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses. It's here that you get to come and actually meet my staff, Universal Accounting, those individuals who are actually committed to your success, helping you be in business for yourself, but not by yourself with Universal. You also get to meet your peers, those individuals like you who are out there actually thriving in business, struggling as it were, helping you actually understand what it is you could actually do through the things that you're learning from those that you interact with. These peers are wonderful people to actually make as new friends, to collaborate with, better service your clients. It's excellent so that you can actually come and actually leave with new connections. So join us for those peer connections. And then lastly, of course, it's the experts. We bring onto the stage phenomenal individuals, people that have wonderful insights that we should be considering as we're running our businesses. And you do need to come and hear what they have to say. GrowCon is an event you do not want to miss. So if you haven't registered yet, I invite you to do so. Go to universalaccounting.com, and in the navigation, you'll actually find GrowCon there, information about the event itself, as well as to tickets to actually register and join us. So I look forward to meeting you there in person. It's also where we have our gala. I don't want to miss mentioning that. It's a gala where we on Monday night actually celebrate those people who are successful in the accounting profession, giving the recognition where it's deserved, those awards needed for those things that have actually been done, the sacrifices made to have a thriving bookkeeping, accounting, or tax business. So join us for the gala as well on the Monday evening of the conference. Now, as it relates to the things that we've discussed here today, if you'd like to actually go binge listen to past episodes, go to universalaccounting.com, and in the navigation, you can find the podcast section where we've put together highlights. Definitely go binge listen to those episodes where we've actually compiled various things based on topics that are relevant to your current situation, whether it's marketing and growing, getting more clients, maybe it's offering quality accounting services and better retaining your clients, perhaps it's working more efficiently with tech stacks. All of these things are available and more. So check out the podcast section at universalaccounting.com. As it relates to your business and these topics that we've been discussing here today, if you'd like to learn more how you can become a professional bookkeeper, professional tax preparer, perhaps offer CFO and advisory services, you definitely just need to contact us by going to universalaccountingschool.com or give us a phone call. You can reach us at 801-265-3777. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take care, have a great day, and be safe out there. Jen, that was wonderful.
Thank you. It was fun. Thank
Yeah,
you. I love learning from you, and everything you had to say was just so spot on.
thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I try to contribute and have the conversation, go both ways. So I'm glad you felt that way. So thank you for that. So here's what I'm going to have you do. I'm going to have you now record that promotional piece that's there in the chat. Just
Yep.
pull that up, and when you're ready, I'm going to have you record that.
Yep. I was just making sure I put it where I can see it so I don't miss
Good.
anything. Let me read one more time.
You bet.
There's so much we discussed. You did a great job of summarizing. I was really impressed.
Thank you. I was listening.
Yeah, you can tell. It was great. Okay. This is Jen Hamilton, and it was such a pleasure to record with Roger an episode of Building the Premier Accounting Firm. We discuss all kinds of things from bottlenecks to systems and team and being able to really get into the operation side to make the accounting firms better. I invite you to listen and to join us.